Video games have come a long way. If you look at a game from today, November 26, 2025, it can look almost like a movie. The characters seem real, the worlds are huge and full of detail, but it was not always like this. Go back to the 1980s, and games looked very different. The journey from simple pixels to stunningly realistic worlds is a story of technology and creativity. It is a story about how artists and programmers pushed machines to their limits. They wanted to create new and exciting experiences for players. This evolution changed not just how games look, but how we play and feel them. It all started with basic shapes and bright colors on a dark screen. In the early 1980s, video games were made of simple blocks called pixels. Think of a game like Pac-Man from 1980. Pac-Man was a yellow circle. The ghosts were colorful, simple shapes with eyes. The maze was just a collection of blue lines. These graphics were not meant to look real, they were symbols. The player's imagination had to do a lot of the work. Programmers had very limited memory and processing power. They had to be clever to create characters and worlds. Each pixel was carefully placed. The limited color palettes meant artists had to choose colors that stood out and conveyed information clearly, like telling one ghost from another. Games like Donkey Kong from 1981 started to show more complex characters. Mario, who was called Jumpman back then, was a small collection of pixels, but you could tell he was a person. He had a red hat, blue overalls, and a mustache. These details were not just for looks, they were a clever solution to a technical problem. The mustache was easier to see than a mouth. The hat meant the programmers did not have to animate hair. These simple designs became iconic. They were born from the limitations of the hardware at the time, forcing a kind of minimalist, yet effective art style that defined an entire generation of gaming. As the decade went on, technology slowly improved. The Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, brought more colors and more detailed sprites to home televisions. A sprite is a two-dimensional image or animation that is part of a larger scene. In The Legend of Zelda from 1986, the world of Hyrule was bigger and more detailed than the single screens of earlier arcade games. Link was a more complex sprite than Pac-Man. He could walk in 4 directions and swing a sword. The world had trees, rocks, and rivers. It was still made of simple tiles and pixels, but it felt like a real place to explore. This was a big step forward in making game worlds feel immersive and believable. The 1990s marked a revolution in video game graphics. The big change was the move from 2-dimensional sprites to 3-dimensional polygons. A polygon is a flat shape, usually a triangle, that can be joined with other polygons to build 3-dimensional models. Early, 3-dimensional games like Star Fox from 1993 used simple, uncolored polygons to create spaceships and enemies. It looked blocky and basic by today's standards, but at the time, it was mind-blowing. For the first time, players could move through a 3-dimensional space. This opened up entirely new ways to design games. Instead of just moving left, right, up, and down, players could now explore worlds with depth and height. Soon, developers learned to cover these polygons with images called textures. A texture is like digital wallpaper. You can wrap it around a 3-dimensional model to make it look detailed. A simple blocky wall could be textured to look like it was made of old weathered bricks. This made 3-dimensional worlds much more believable. Games like Tomb Raider from 1996 used this technique to create ancient tombs and jungles. Lara Croft's character model was made of polygons, but her clothes and face were textures. This combination of 3-dimensional models and detailed textures became the new standard for creating realistic and immersive game environments and characters. The arrival of dedicated 3-dimensional graphics cards for personal computers accelerated this evolution. These cards were special pieces of hardware designed to do one thing very well: process 3-dimensional graphics. This took the pressure off the computer's main processor. With graphics cards, games could have more polygons, higher resolution textures, and smoother frame rates. A higher frame rate means the game looks less choppy and more fluid. Games like Quake from 1996 showed what was possible with fast-paced action in fully 3-dimensional arenas. The lighting was more advanced, creating dark, moody corridors that added to the game's atmosphere. By the 2000s and 2010s, this technology became more and more powerful. Polygons became so small and numerous that you could no longer see them. Textures became incredibly high resolution. Developers added advanced lighting, shadows, and physics. Water started to ripple and reflect realistically. Characters' faces could show subtle emotions. Games like The Last of Us from 2013 were praised for their lifelike characters and detailed, post-apocalyptic world. Graphics were no longer just about representing a world, they were about making that world feel completely real and emotionally resonant. This push for realism continues today with technologies like ray tracing, which simulates light in a physically accurate way. As game graphics became more complex, a new feature appeared: the Graphics Settings menu. This menu is a control panel that lets players adjust how a game looks and performs. In the early days of gaming, there were no settings. The game looked the same for everyone, because the hardware was simple and standardized. But with the rise of PC gaming, people had computers with different levels of power. A brand new, expensive computer could handle more complex graphics than an older, cheaper one. Graphics settings were created to let the game run well on a wide variety of machines. It gave players control over their own experience. So, what are these settings? Let's look at a few common ones. Resolution is one of the most basic. It controls how many pixels are used to display the game. A higher resolution like 4K means more pixels and a sharper, more detailed image. A lower resolution uses fewer pixels, which can make the image look blurry or blocky, but it makes the game easier for the computer to run. Think of it like the difference between a high-definition photograph and a pixelated image on an old website. Choosing the right resolution is the first step to balancing visual quality with performance. Texture quality is another important setting. As we learned, textures are the images wrapped around three-dimensional models. High-quality textures are very detailed, making a brick wall look rough and a character's clothing look like real fabric. Low-quality textures are blurrier and less detailed, but they use less video memory. If your graphics card doesn't have much memory, using high-quality textures can make the game stutter or run slowly. Adjusting this setting lets you decide if you want crisp, detailed surfaces or smoother gameplay. It's a trade-off between realism and performance. Other key settings include shadows, anti-aliasing, and view distance. The shadow setting controls how realistic shadows look. High-quality shadows are soft and dynamic, but they are very demanding on the hardware. Anti-aliasing is a technique that smooths out the jagged, stair-step edges you can sometimes see on diagonal lines. It makes the image look cleaner and more polished. View distance determines how far into the game world you can see. A longer view distance lets you see distant mountains and buildings, making the world feel larger, but it requires the computer to draw more objects at once. Graphics settings are all about giving players choice. They help bridge the gap between different types of hardware. Someone with a top-of-the-line gaming PC, like one you might find in 2025, can turn all the settings up to Ultra. They can experience the game exactly as the developers envisioned it, with photorealistic lighting from ray tracing, incredibly detailed textures, and a super smooth frame rate. This allows them to get the most visually stunning experience possible, where the line between the game and reality becomes wonderfully blurred. Their powerful hardware can handle the heavy workload required for such high fidelity. On the other hand, a player with an older computer or a less powerful laptop can still enjoy the same game. They can go into the graphics settings and make adjustments. They might lower the resolution, set textures to medium, and turn off complex shadow effects. The game might not look as spectacular, but it will run smoothly. This is incredibly important. It means you don't always need the newest, most expensive hardware to play new games. It makes gaming more accessible to more people. This flexibility ensures that a wider audience can participate in the hobby, regardless of their budget for computer parts. This choice is also important for different types of players. A competitive player in a fast-paced shooter game, like Counter-Strike, might turn their graphics settings down on purpose. Why? Because for them, the highest possible frame rate is more important than pretty visuals. A smoother game means faster reaction times. They might prefer a simpler look if it helps them spot enemies more easily. In contrast, a player exploring a vast open world in a game like The Witcher 3 might want to turn the settings up. They want to be immersed in the beautiful scenery and appreciate the art and detail of the world. In conclusion, the evolution of graphics has been a spectacular journey, from the simple blips of Pong to the ray-traced worlds of today. But just as important as this technological progress is the power of choice that graphics settings provide. They are a fundamental part of modern gaming. They empower players to tailor the experience to their specific hardware and personal preferences. Whether you are a competitive player seeking performance or a casual explorer seeking beauty, graphic settings ensure that the digital worlds we love can be enjoyed by everyone. They put control back into the hands of the player, making each gaming experience unique.